Workers that were happier 1 week as compared to the previous week essentially had somewhere between 12 and 15% more weekly sales. So it's incredibly important. So investing in employee well-being at the individual level, we're already picking up huge productivity effects.
When you talk about happiness, I think so many people have a different definition of that. When you talk about happiness, what do you mean by it?
In our world of sort of psychology, behavioral science, economics, policy, we've come around with a very generalist notion of satisfaction with life, happy in the moment or the absence of stress, so positive and negative affect, hedonics, and then sort of an eudaimonia element would need to come in. And if you score high on all of this, then you'd be very, very, you'd be leading your best possible life, I think.
Talk a little bit about the relationship between happiness and work, and what's the chicken and the egg in there,
Yes.
and then what companies can do to think about making work happier.
So there's a lot of reasons why companies should be investing in workplace well-being. And we talked about well-being being important and COVID-19 having put a spotlight on this. And for all good philosophical reasons, we should invest in workplace well-being. But a lot of managers still need convincing and need a business case for it. But I'm glad to say that there is a business case, and I've contributed a little bit on that front, if I may say so. And so the pathways for how and why employee well-being and happiness translates into better performance for organizations and productivity at the individual level. First and foremost, good companies attract better people, and making the data transparent, as Indeed is doing, will help on that front. And then good workplaces also retain talent longer. But the problem with this notion of, are happier workers more productive is, as you rightly point out, there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. So while a lot of people, and it's part of management mythology, frankly, to say happier workers are more productive, but it's never been shown causally because of that chicken and egg problem. Because the chicken here is happiness, the egg is productivity, and doing well for, say, customers. But the problem is, it may not be you being happier driving greater performance in your job. It might well be the fact that you're doing well in your job, customers responding positively, and that feeds back into your happiness in the first place. I'm sure if your manager taps you on the shoulder saying great job, or you get a pay rise or something of that kind, that will feed into your happiness. So that's the return, what we call the reverse causality. Workers that were happier 1 week as compared to the previous week essentially had somewhere between 12 and 15% more weekly sales. So it's incredibly important. So investing in employee well-being at the individual level, we're already picking up huge productivity effects.
What is the impact on someone's overall happiness and well-being of their happiness at work? And is that something that you have, specific research that you've done that says this is how it contributes?
We have 24 hours in the day. We sleep hopefully 8, more likely 6 or 7. Then we probably spend about 8 hours at work, if not more. And so whatever is left in between is also very, very heavily impacted by the time we spend at work. So in survey after survey, when you ask people more qualitative sort of surveys about how does your work potentially impede with the quality of relationships outside of work, we find it's huge impact. It really sort of spills over in positive or negative ways on people's life satisfaction. So job satisfaction is a huge contributor to life satisfaction. For me, the first time this became really, really obvious is when we simply looked at, we split the world's population and their life and how they felt about life into those that had a job versus those that did not have a job. And what you found is sort of the average life satisfaction in the world is about 5.5 out of 10. This is part of our World Happiness Report. But if you split the world's population into two, those with a job and those without a job, you see that there's a 25% gap between them. And that's because it's not just pay that you receive. It's not just a paycheck or being able to put bread on the table because of having a job. It's also because a job gives you identity. It gives you social ties. It gives you a routine during the day, and it gives you lifelong learning. Because after school, there's nothing if it isn't through work. And mostly, actually, the non-pecuniary reasons, work is so critically important in driving general well-being.
Jan-Emmanuel De Neve, thank you so much for joining me today, but thank you so much for the partnership and the amazing work that you do.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And to everyone at Indeed.